Hey everybody. Today we want to talk about very basics of using a ruler. There is something about introducing a ruler, asking students to measure, that sometimes brings some anxiety. So I wanted to make this video to show you some of the basics and do some practical application of ruler use in the art room. We're going to start off first just taking a look at the ruler itself. I'm using an aluminum ruler that uses both eighths and sixteenths. And I don't often ask students to measure to the 16th or to the 8th, but your teacher might. So I wanted to explain how I'm counting that and how I'm arriving at that. And then we're going to use some application. If we take a look at our ruler, right now I have the eighths side of the ruler. And the reason it's the eighths, or the way that I know it's the eighths, besides from it telling us right here, if I count these lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you'll see that there are 8 sections to make up that distance of 1 inch from the edge of the ruler to the 1 inch mark. Okay. If I were to count and now say I need a measurement at 1/8 of an inch, that would be right here, 1/8 inch. If I needed a measurement at 3/8 of an inch, I can say 1, 2, 3. And there's my 3/8 measurement. Okay. Now, if we start to talk about fractions a little bit, right here, 1, 2, that's 2/8, or otherwise known as a quarter. So this is a 1/4 inch. If I count all the way across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4/8 reduced is 1/2, and that's 1/2 measurement, half of an inch. The same can be done if I look at sixteenths. Now we've taken those same measurements and we've broken them down into 16th sections, or 16th of an inch. So I can say 1, 2, 3 16ths of an inch. Okay, so just reading the ruler, hopefully, and understanding what each of those measurements mean, makes a big difference in taking some of the anxiety out of using the ruler. Now, every ruler is slightly different in the way that it's printed, but I note for my students that this particular ruler, the 1 inch mark is this long line after the number. Okay, a lot of my students think that they get confused and they think that it's the line above the number or in front of the number, but this long line is the 1 inch measurement. Okay. Now, the ruler has 2 purposes. The first purpose, obviously, is to measure, and we just talked about the differences between eighths of an inch, 16ths of an inch, where the inch mark is on the ruler, the half inch mark, breaking down the fractions. Okay. The second use of the ruler, or application or need for a ruler, is to draw a straight line. And a lot of my students often dive right into the straight line part of things and they miss a very key step. That key step is that in order to create a straight line, you must have 2 points in space. 1 point in space, or 1 measurement, is never enough to provide a straight line. I often tell my students that you can get it done with 2 points in space, but 3 points in space, you're guaranteed a straight line. Okay, so what we're taught to sometimes do is to put our ruler at the side of the page and measure over 3 inches. And I see students go to the 3 inch and they understand that the edge of the ruler to the 3 but then they do this kind of thing. Well, that's not really helping us. That tells us that that's that distance from the edge, yes, but if I'm making a border or I'm trying to make a straight line off of this measurement, that's not going to give me the information that I need. So this is not what we're doing, okay? If I want to create a straight line that is 3 inches from the side of my paper and parallel to the side of my paper, I have to measure from the edge of the paper 3 times and make 3 dots and then use my ruler as a straight edge. So let's try that. I'm going to take my ruler, make sure that I am lined up with the edge of the page. Craftsmanship is important. And then I'm going to come over, and this is my measurement at the 3-inch mark. And I'm going to make a small dot or a very slight vertical line. Vertical is up and down. Then I'm going to make my second point in space. So I'm going to slide my ruler down to somewhere near the middle of my page. It means nothing this way. Okay, it only means something this way right now. So I'm going to make a mark at the 3-inch again. And then I'm going to go for my third point in space somewhere near the bottom and mark at the 3-inch mark. Now I have 3 points in space, and now I can use my ruler, turn it around, and use my ruler like a straight edge, as a straight edge. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to put my pencil there, make sure that I'm connected here and I'm connected here. Now, we didn't measure anything up and down. We only measured from left to right. So I'm going to go from the tippy top of my page all the way through all 3 measurements. Okay. And now I have a straight line parallel with the side of my paper. So parallel means that these 2 lines will go off into space and never ever touch. And that distance from here at the edge to my line is 3 inches at the top. From here to my line, 3 inches in the middle. Here to my line, 3 inches near the bottom. So that's using the ruler to measure and the ruler as a straight edge. Okay, now that we've talked about the different uses of the ruler, measuring with the ruler, using the ruler as a straight edge, let's talk about 3 applications for the ruler in the art room. The first thing that I sometimes ask my students to do is to create a border around their paper. I might ask them to do a 1-inch border, a 1/2 inch border, a 3/4 inch border. Sometimes if you're creating a wash box, you might need to use the tape. But if you're not actually taping off your border and you do want to have a little bit of room to place a mat on top or to kind of keep those edges clean, measuring out a border is very helpful for that. So let me turn my paper over and let's go ahead and create a 1-inch border on this particular paper so that I can have a 1-inch white clean border that I could later tape and mask off if I want, or use as a frame, or use to put underneath mapboard. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to make my measurements first. I want to make sure that the edge of my ruler is at the edge of the paper. And so I want to measure over and make a small line above the 1 inch, right? Because we're making a 1-inch border all the way around our paper. And then what I can do is I could either focus on one line at a time, or I could try to do double duty if I'm in a hurry and I understand what's happening. My paper's kind of raggedy at the end here, but it's close to 8 inches, so I'm going to come over to the 7-inch mark, and I'm going to make a small vertical dash above the 7-inch mark. Okay, now I have 1 point in space on the left and 1 point in space on the right. If I turn my ruler around and use it as a straight edge, it's not enough. I see many students do that. It's not going to work. I need at least 2 points in space, 3 to really make sure I've done it correctly. So now I'm going to take my ruler down to somewhere in the middle, because it doesn't mean anything vertically right now, just measuring from side to side. Make a measurement at 1 inch, make a measurement at 7 inches. Okay, then I'm going to slide my paper down to somewhere near the bottom and make my third measurement in space to check my work. 1 inch, 7 inches. Then I can turn my ruler around and use my ruler like a straight edge, being sure to go through all 3 points in space. And I can do that on the left side, and I can do that on the right side. Okay, so now I have 2 parallel lines that will never touch, and they are parallel to the edge of the paper, and they are 1 inch from the edge of the paper. So I've done my vertical lines. Now, in order to create my border, I need lines on the bottom and the top as well. I'm going to turn my paper 90 degrees. Okay, and I'm just going to repeat the same process. If I lay my ruler down, making sure that my ruler is at the edge of the paper, okay, so I'm always measuring off a fixed point, which is the edge of the paper, going to make a measurement mark at 1 inch, then come over, and I'm 11 inches wide, so I'm going to make a mark at the 10 inch, right? So there's 1 inch in, then I'm going to move up to somewhere near the middle, 1 inch, 10 inch mark, move it up again to 1 inch, 10 inch, and now I have 3 points in space, and I can use my ruler like a straight edge, as a straight edge. And if I want to save on some erasing, I can go all the way from the top of the paper to the bottom of the paper, and then I can erase those corners out all the way from the top of the paper to the bottom of the paper, and then I can come in and erase those corners out and have a nice clean border to work with. So there's our border, 1 inch border. Another thing that I often ask students to do is to find the center of their paper. There's a lot of different reasons why we might do that. We might divide up for radial symmetry, or we may need to use the safety compass to create a circle for some reason or another. So finding the center of the paper is one of those things that students sometimes struggle with. So let's review that. It's going to be a little bit of a different process, but we're still drawing straight lines using 3 points in space. So this paper, if I lay my ruler down at the edge of the paper, actually, let's spin this because this is, I lay my ruler down at the edge of the paper. I want to make sure that my ruler is lined up with the edge of the paper. If I look across, if I round up, the measurement is 8 inches. So half of 8 inches is 4 inches. So right at the 4 inch mark, I'm going to make a slight little vertical dash in space. Okay. 2 points in space is never enough to give me a straight line, and I'm creating a crosshair at the center point. So I'm going to take my ruler and move it down ever so slightly, and I'm going to mark 4 inches in space again, making sure that I'm measuring off of the same fixed point. Now, I don't necessarily need to go all the way to the tippy top of the paper and all the way to the very bottom of the paper. I just want a crosshair line, a vertical line that I know is parallel to each side of the paper. And I will use that line to measure off my center point. So I want to make sure that my ruler is lined up with this point and lined up with this point. And I'm just going to create this vertical crosshair line. Okay. Now I want to go ahead and I want to turn my paper a quarter turn again, or 90 degrees. And now I know exactly the middle point from the bottom to the top of the paper, but I don't know the middle point from this side to this side. So what I have to do is take my ruler and lay my ruler along that line. And if I look, I can see that the total width of my paper is 11 inches. Half of 11 is 5.5. So if I come here and I say, here's my 5-inch mark, here's my 6-inch mark, this long line between the two, that's 5.5. So if I take a vertical line and I place that vertical line, my center point is right here. So if I were to go ahead and grab a safety compass or any kind of compass, I could put the compass mark at the center and I can go ahead and create my circle. Okay. The third common thing that I ask students to do is to create a grid. And the grid is very useful for beginning drawing students who want to take their photo and either reproduce that photo as a drawing or make that photo larger or smaller. And figuring out the ratio between the photograph and the actual grid is a little more involved. We might do a separate video for that. But actually drawing the grid, once it's drawn in, it's very, very useful. But many students shy away from using this drawing process because they are intimidated by using the ruler and they are intimidated by taking the time to draw the grid and make sure that their lines are perfectly parallel and perpendicular to each other. Their lines start to get a little wonky on them. They start to get a little frustrated with the ruler and they feel like it's just not worth it. So I want to break down for you how I would create a 1-inch grid on this piece of drawing paper using the same process basically that we've just used. Remember that you want to use 3 points in space always to keep your lines nice and straight. Okay, so let's start off. I'm going to do my vertical lines. And so I will take my ruler and I'll place the ruler somewhere near the top of the paper. It doesn't matter up and down. It only matters left to right now. And my 1-inch marks are these long lines after each number. Okay, so I'm going to make a small vertical line at the 1-inch, 2-inch, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, one set of measurements, we need 2 more. Well, at least 1 more, but 2 more to really make sure we're doing it correctly. Slide my ruler down to somewhere near the middle. Line my ruler up with the edge of the page. So it's a fixed point. 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's my second set of measurements. Just to be safe, I'm going to make a third set of measurements line my ruler up with a fixed point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I can go ahead and turn my ruler around using the ruler as a straight edge now. Place my ruler, making sure that I matched up with the first measurement, the third measurement, second measurement, and I'm going to go, remember, all the way from the top of the page all the way through to the bottom. Then I'm going to go to my second line, top of the page, all the way to the bottom. And work my way across the paper. Now, most of my students do this first set of measurements and they get it. Okay, I understand measuring from a fixed point, somewhere near the top, somewhere near the bottom, somewhere near the middle, and they get that. What starts to throw them off is when they start to want to do the opposite side. I want you to now, when we go to fill in the rest of the grid, try to forget you've done these lines, okay? So I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to turn it 90 degrees, and I have to measure again, just like what we've done, but for some reason, some of my students, they get confused by those old measurements. So let's forget those old measurements are there. If we want, we can line our ruler up even just above it so we don't even see them. But now we just repeat the process all over again. Make sure we're set to a fixed point in space. Do 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's my first set of measurements. I need a second set of measurements, and I can even use my ruler and hide that old line so it doesn't confuse me. And then do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then slide my ruler down somewhere near the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I can use my ruler as a straight edge, making sure that I'm going through these points, the tippy top of my paper to the very bottom, right? Those horizontal lines don't mean anything to us right now. We're forgetting that we even drew them. And if your measurements are correct, trust your ruler, trust your measurements. Don't go down the rabbit hole of trying to second guess if they're converging together, because an optical illusion will start to happen. So try not to drive yourself too crazy with that. Okay, so now that's my 1 inch grid on my drawing paper. What I would do to set up a grid drawing if I have a corresponding photograph is that I can go ahead and I can say this is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay, now A is also 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so now if I were plotting with my photograph, this is A1 and my photograph corresponds. This is E5 and so on. Okay, hopefully you find that helpful. There's 3 applications that we use in the art room all the time. that require a ruler to keep things organized and to keep things nice and neat. And if you remember those key things, using the ruler with a fixed width and space, which is the edge of your paper, marking a very small vertical dash above the inch mark, identifying the inch or the eighth inch beforehand, and then using 3 points in space to create your line, you should be guaranteed success. I hope you find this helpful.